Hey there, retro gamers. Today on Smashing Bricks, it's more fun than a barrel of monkeys with Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Hey, welcome back to Smashing Bricks, a retro gaming podcast. My name is Eddie Inzauto, and this is where we're talking about Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Joining me here today for the second time, you know him, you love him, Anthony Gnagnarelli. How you doing, Ant?
Hey, what's going on, Eddie? What's going on, audience?
Not much, man. I had a great time playing Donkey Kong Country, spoiler alert, and I'm ready to talk about it. How about you?
Didn't get a chance to play this time around, but I will definitely revisit it. I took a look at YouTube and saw a run through and watched it at double speed. That game just reminded me how intense it was back in the day as a kid. Super fun.
All right. Okay, so I guess without any further ado, let's hear what your experience was back in the day, as we like to start out recalling our histories. So what's your history with Donkey Kong Country and I guess any ensuing titles?
I think my first memory playing this one may have actually been at your house. I think
Oh,
this
my
might have been.
copy.
Yeah, it probably was your copy. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I remember the world just being so like rich and dynamic from level to level, like between backgrounds flowing and weather changing, just super vibrant, unlike other games that I remember, coming off of like the NES and Genesis. It was there was so much to that game, left to right, up and down, rolling, roll jumps. The fact that you could switch between characters, that was like on the fly, that was pretty awesome. Just like a whole bunch of different enemies too. So every level had its own twist. It was as fresh as banana pie.
So suffice it to say, it was a really spectacular experience at the time for you.
Yeah, without a doubt. And a game that I revisited many a time. Just going,
Nice.
playing through, beating it, picking it up on different saves that I would save at different stages on purpose and going through, just replaying levels, even if the save was beaten. It was a lot of replayability for sure.
Nice, nice. So, okay. So for me, I have actually a really interesting story for Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, tell it.
Um, so I got this game secondhand. I must have been in, what was it? Maybe like fourth grade or something, maybe fifth grade. And there was a kid who rode my bus to school, and he was like super into video games at the time. And he was kind of like a cool kid to me, and he was older. He was either a year or two older than me. I think probably 1 year older than me. And he had Donkey Kong Country, and he wanted to trade it for some reason. But I had this game, and this is really funny because I didn't know any better. And he clearly didn't know any better because I had Doomsday Warrior for Super Nintendo. Doomsday Warrior was a really bad 2D fighting game that came out in the wake of Street Fighter 2 having been ported over to the Super Nintendo, and then all the different companies started making their own 2D fighting game.
Bro, I don't even remember the title.
And this one was not good. And I had it, and he wanted it and didn't want Donkey Kong Country. So I made this trade, and it was literally the best video game trade in the history of the world, I think. Um, and I got the best of this trade, but I also got in trouble. My dad yelled at me for trading games at school because I guess he just, he figured, we paid for this game. You don't know what you're trading for. You're just a kid. Maybe you don't know. But man, that I slayed that trade. I got one of the best games of all time, and I gave away literal garbage.
Oh,
So good for me, I guess, because when I got the game home, it it was like one of those transcendental gaming experiences for me. It was a whole new world of graphics, game music. The gameplay was like an extension of the Mario platforming I was used to, and I got so into this game. And at the time, I thought it was such a difficult game. I thought it was so hard, and it took me a really long time to A, make it through to the end of the game, and B, to finally get 101% on my save file, which I did do as a kid.
nice.
And I love this game, and I revisited it a few times, although I haven't played it in a really, really long time until, just last week, and I ran through it one more time on emulator.
Now, did Nintendo Power get you to that 101? What achievements? Because you probably had to get like all of the Kongs and get all of the secret barrels. What made it 101%? What was that one?
I don't know what the last one that I got was, or what the last one in the game is, or if there's a particular special 1%, or if it's really
Hmm.
just cumulative and whichever one you get last. But I'm sure I had help. I can't recall. It was so long ago, but I probably used some Nintendo Power to help me get there.
Yeah, you had an epic collection of Nintendo Powers, by the way.
Yeah, I did. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I said that I wasn't really aware of what was going on in that trade, but I am not giving myself enough credit because
You
I was
saw that game coming,
I was a
and there was an
savvy little
opportunity.
boy, and
Yeah,
this
totally.
game had a $16 million marketing campaign, including a VHS tape that was sent to every Nintendo Power subscriber, which I got and still have in a box in my closet. So, you know what? I probably just took that kid for a ride on that trade. Now that I'm thinking about it.
uh, you remember the guy's name? I think you owe him
I
an apology
don't.
card.
I don't remember his name. I remember exactly what he looks like and what he dressed like all the time. He was one of those big Jenko jeans kids. Like his pant legs were bigger than both of his feet.
Gotcha.
I remember the kid. I thought he was cool, but I still wanted that game.
You got it. You got it. You
Yeah, I
hustled him
did.
right out of his Jinko patch, dude.
Oh my
Right out of his
goodness. What a
UFO
bad
pants.
kid I was, I guess.
Uh,
Okay, so yeah, so that's really my history with the game. My swindling history. Um I guess that kind of brings us to the history of the game's development and marketing cycle itself, with that video, which was great. And it kind of told the tale a little bit to all the kids because they were really hyping the new technology in this game. And I'll just launch right into the details here. So Donkey Kong Country was released worldwide in November 1994. It was a few days off in like North America versus Europe versus Japan, but it was all in November.
mm,
And then it got a sort of a ported release in 2000 on the Game Boy Color, and then another one in 2003 on the Game Boy Advance. Obviously not the same exact game, but based on the original game. We're not going to go into those.
Now,
So
was this Donkey Kong's first appearance since the arcade?
actually, yes. So this was the first Donkey Kong Country game since Donkey Kong Country 3 that released in 1983. Donkey Kong Country 3, all the Donkey Kongs did make it to the NES in ports. They were all ported over. So
Right.
DK3 was ported to the NES in 1986. But that was the last time we saw Donkey Kong other than in like little cameos.
Oh, okay.
And this was also the first Donkey Kong game not directed or developed by Shigeru Miyamoto. although he did have some input as far as ideas were concerned. But the majority of this game was handled entirely by Rare, the company that Nintendo hired to bring this game to life.
The same guys that put out Killer Instinct, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you
Yeah.
can actually see some of the DNA of the graphics workstations that they were working with in Killer Instinct and in this. So Rare was a company in the UK headed up by Tim and Chris Stamper, and they actually made a lot of games for the NES. They made RC Pro-Am and Battletoads and like numerous other games that you'll be playing an old game and you're like, "Oh my god, this is a Rare game." And some of them were good, some of them were like whatever. But they started to reduce their output and they invested in these silicon graphics workstations for £80,000 each. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they were using these to try to make better video games. And at this time, Nintendo wanted to compete with Sega's Aladdin, which came out in 1993 to rave reviews.
Oh, what an amazing game that was, yeah.
Yeah, and the Super Nintendo had an Aladdin game, but it wasn't the same game. They came out in the same month in 1993, but the one on the Genesis was made by Virgin Games, and the one on Super Nintendo was made by Capcom. And I think it was pretty agreed on that the Sega one was superior. It was a different game. So Nintendo wanted to combat this. This was also kind of in the wake of Sega's big marketing campaign with, Sega does what Nintendo don't. They hired a really strong head of marketing who really got Sega back into the game with the Genesis. And Nintendo needed to come back, and they started their Play It Loud marketing campaign. I don't know if you remember that. You remember Play It Loud?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah, that was their response to Sega.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even realize that. I was such a Genesis head, a Sega debt, like just through and through. That was, I went from NES to Genesis, and, I kind of, with the exception of the flagship titles, I was really heavy into Genesis. So, but
Okay, that's good. We'll have to get more Genesis games on some future episodes because it's harder for me because I was so much of a Super Nintendo kid. But in any case, so Nintendo buys a minority stake in Rare. They buy 25% of Rare, and then eventually they increase that to 49%. So they make Rare second party. They're like basically in-house. And what Rare is doing for Donkey Kong Country is they're using these silicon graphics workstations to render 3D models and then compress them down into two-dimensional sprites to run on the Super Nintendo hardware without a great loss in quality. And the results were groundbreaking. This is
it almost
one of the
felt like
first...
you were playing on a console from the future with that game
Yeah, it did,
in
right?
particular. Yeah.
It looked 3D.
Yeah,
Back
absolutely.
then, it looked amazing because it was coming from 3D but turned into a flat picture. And so Rare did this. They accomplished their goal. They made this new Donkey Kong Country game as the hip, cool 90s Donkey Kong with his little buddy Diddy Kong. Okay, and we'll get into the gameplay, but it was very different from the original Donkey Kong, and it was more like a Mario game, kind of on bananas. So they had this big marketing campaign. They spent $16 million in the US alone. They sent out these videos that sort of went through describing the process with the silicon graphics and just really hyping this up because graphics were everything back then. And the game was released in 94 and it sold 9.3 million copies on the Super Nintendo, making it the number 3 biggest selling Super Nintendo game of all time.
What was it behind? What were the other two games that came in first and second?
Oof, so I don't know, but one of them has to be Super Mario World, has to be number 1.
Right.
Number 2, I would kind of assume is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Okay. Yeah, you're
That I
probably
don't
100%
know.
on that.
If you're able to look that up in the intervening moments and just yell it out when you figure it out, we can tell everybody. But on top of that 9.3 million on Super Nintendo, it also came back on the Super Nintendo Classic recently, like in the past, whatever it was, 5 years. We had the SNES Classic, and that sold 5.3 million copies. So that's another 5.3 that included Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, yeah, it's actually sandwiched. Yeah, Super Mario World, number one at
Mm-hmm.
20,610,000. Super Mario All Stars at 10,550,000. Donkey Kong Country at 9,300,000. And then Super Mario Kart. So people love the
Oh,
country
Mario Kart.
above Mario Kart, which is another just epic franchise.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll have to hit that one at some point. Yeah, I forgot all about All Stars. Okay, so yeah. So number 3 behind Mario games and before Mario Kart. I mean, you can't really do better than that on a super on the Super Nintendo. But this game was released to rave reviews. It has a 89% aggregate score, according to my research, and it spawned a bunch of sequels. It got Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest, and Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie's Double Trouble, I think was the title of that one.
Yeah, I think you're on money with that one.
And then Donkey Kong Land and Donkey Kong Land 2 for the Game Boy Color. But what it also did was it inspired an entire generation of video games, starting with some of the remaining titles on the Super Nintendo and bleeding all the way through and directly into the hardware, even of the Nintendo 64. So we had, like you said, Killer Instinct. It used the same Silicon graphics techniques, right? It
Right.
had those like 3D characters on a 2D plane. And Nintendo even saw fit to give Rare the sequel to Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball with Ken Griffey Jr.'s winning run. That switched over from one developer to Rare doing the second one. Now, did you have a Nintendo 64?
Oh yeah, it did. Yeah, and the most notable Rare game that I can remember is GoldenEye.
Yeah. So Rare kind of stopped. They got into like actual 3D at that point, but there were a lot of elements within a lot of Nintendo 64 games that used this sort of silicon graphics 3D model rendered down into a 2D sprite. You can see it in Nintendo first party games like we just talked about Mario Kart. So Mario Kart 64, all the characters in that game, they had those fuzzy edges that look 3D, right?
Right.
Those were those 3D models built in a Silicon Graphics workstation, compressed down to a 2D sprite. And they did the same thing for some of the enemies in Super Mario 64. They had some of those, like the big bomb on the top of the mountain in the first level.
Right.
You could pick out, if you think about it, there were so many of them, and a lot of even like third party games would use this technique eventually. The Nintendo 64 was kind of built with silicon graphics in mind, and it's really all thanks to Rare's work, and their first real release with it was Donkey Kong Country. Whew. All right, so that's our history. We're gonna stop it there. And now we'll go into like what is the game? What's it about? And what did we find out when revisiting it, either, hands-on or through video in your case? So what's the game? What is this game about? What kind of a game is it? Tell me what you know.
Well, I mean, you're greeted with this map, and it's a map starting at the bottom, and you're working your way up to the top, and there's there's a ship in the ocean behind you, I guess, and you're working your way through these different worlds. I think 40 levels. Just, working your way from left to right in most cases, sometimes right to left. A lot of verticality, much more so in the latter games. But you're jumping on enemies, you're cartwheeling or barrel rolling through them, collecting bananas like you would coins in Super Mario to get extra lives, collecting KONGs to get extra lives. There's balloons for extra lives. There are different like buddy animal tokens that you can collect for bonus levels. But yeah, your goal is to run through the end of the level and basically grab all the stuff you can, without getting your 2 hits in,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt heavily inspired by Mario games, right? Like Mario
For sure.
3,
Even
for
with that like
example.
rolling thumb movement, that key element of Mario where you got your hand on the gas and you're just, either tapping it to get that burst in through the rolls or the cartwheels and then getting that timed jump. One of the things I
very
really loved
true.
in the game was the fact that you can do those rolls like off a ledge and do like the mid-air jump, to maybe grab a letter in a case or, get to a secret barrel or, collect a bunch of bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Super cool. Yeah, or just cross like crazy gaps, to make it in time to an extra life balloon that was, floating away.
Yeah, they really kind of tied in the overall design philosophy and some of the major concepts they were going for in this game to the basic mechanics that were lifted mostly from Mario. Yeah, I didn't even think about how it has the hold down the one button to make you go fast and the other button to jump. That's like 100% a Mario game right there.
Yeah, for sure. So often beating up on Mario, like, in his introduction in the arcade games, and then taking it one step forward, doing it in this super realistic, almost 3-dimensional world with some real colorful array of enemies, all different types of animals, different colors, different abilities, different strategies for each. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. And like you said, the worlds were organized on those point to point sort of maps, just like the Super Mario 3 or Super Mario World. And you would go in and do your thing. We also have 2 different characters, and they play differently, right? So we have Donkey Kong and we have Diddy Kong. What's the difference between these 2 guys?
Well, I think like Donkey Kong is, you take a look at him and he's built like a brick donkey house. He's like the tank. So he's got the roll that could take out most enemies. He has this ground pound, right? And he's got less vertical of a jump for sure. He does like a leap. Whereas Diddy Kong is your nimble character. He's fast. He doesn't do a roll, so he can't take out all the enemies that Donkey Kong can. He does have a cartwheel, but he's much faster. He jumps higher, jumps farther, and he's cool, man. He reminds me of like the Fresh Prince. He's got like his forward hat, which is sometimes backwards, his red hat that matches his red shirt. And I think he's a chimpanzee compared to Donkey.
Yeah, he seems like he's
clearly a gorilla.
Or just a very small gorilla. Maybe he's like a younger gorilla. But also,
he's got a long tail.
Oh, that's right.
So I don't think he's a gorilla at all.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And also mechanically, he's smaller, right? And weaker. So he carries his barrels out in front of him, which is actually really cool because it helps protect you as you're moving forward. If you run into someone, the barrel will kill them and you'll get like an extra chance. And
kind of like the shell in Super Mario where you can charge.
Yeah, exactly.
Take that hit.
And it made it easier to find the secret rooms because if he's holding it in front of him, if he's holding it in front, if you just bump into a wall, it'll break. Whereas Donkey Kong, you either have to throw it or put it down because he holds it over his head like a beastly strong man.
Yeah. Kind of had. Did he have an arc to his throw at all, or was it just his throw started upward and like came down almost diagonally?
I think the latter. I don't think it went up. I
Yeah.
think it kind
Okay.
of just kind
Yeah,
of
because
gradually
when Diddy
flowed
throws the
downward.
barrel, he like kind of almost bowled it.
Yeah, like
Almost kind of like those Manky Kongs did, but in a much less disrespectful fashion.
yeah, Diddy's
I've got
kind
a
of
bone
went
to pick with
downward
those
much
Mankeys.
faster, whereas Donkey's kind of
Yeah.
went straight forward and then down.
Hmm.
So he had a little bit more range on his throw. And if you're holding it above your head, you can jump into enemies above you much easier with him. But
Yeah.
I always would switch to Diddy Kong before playing.
Me too.
Yeah, that seemed
Oh
like
yeah.
the way to play. Like Donkey Kong, you pulled out if you needed someone, if you needed your buff buddy. Yeah, for those what are they called again? The muscular guys.
Oh, the crushes.
Yeah, if you had a crusher, you needed Donkey.
Yeah.
So you start as Donkey Kong. He finds out at the beginning that his bananas were all stolen, and his buddy Diddy Kong, who I think was like retconned to be his nephew.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, I
I think
always
they were
thought it was
just.
his nephew.
Oh, was it from the
I
beginning? I
thought.
thought they were just buddies. But in any
Okay.
case, so Diddy Kong is locked in a barrel. Donkey Kong sets off to find out who stole his bananas, and then we're off and we're just doing these side-scrolling platform levels. And we're just faced with a combination of what, like jungle critters mixed in with the Kremlings as our main antagonist, right? These sort of crocodile alligator type
Yeah, walking
people.
upright on two legs. These
Yeah. And they seem
these.
to have invaded the what is it called? The Conga jungle where Donkey Kong lived.
I think so. I think that's what it was called.
Yep. So we get into the game, and what strikes us first? To me, it's instantly those beautiful rendered graphics, not just the sprites that we were talking about, but those backgrounds, those pre-rendered three-dimensional backgrounds. They always look to me like, oh man, like you could reach out and touch them, right? Like they
Yeah.
were made of plastic, like they were made of some, right? Like they were just there,
Yeah.
made of something.
And there was just so much depth to it too, like
With the
from the
lighting,
trees in the
shading.
background, the shading, the sizing, even the foreground where like some of the just the plants felt like they were just jutting out, right out of the screen at you. Even the like the ground that you were running on, the berms and the hills and the dips. It's just crazy depth to that game.
Yeah, and interestingly, if you pay really close attention, you can see repeated patterns. Like they reused assets just like in any other game, but the way that it was put together, in my opinion, was sparsely enough. Like they repeated only every so often that it never looked like it was clone stamped.
Yeah, no, never. No, everything seemed fresh. Always.
Yeah. Okay, so in our first little world there, we've got we burst out of our treehouse and we're just in the jungle. Um and then we've got some other levels. What are there any in this first world that really stood out to you, either for any reason, really, for the gameplay mechanisms they employ, for the graphical elements that they incorporate, for the music, for anything?
Ooh, well, Barrel Cannon Canyon.
Mm.
That was like where we're first introduced to this additional gameplay element where you've got, these timed explosions out of these barrels to make sure that you get them. You got some barrels that are, going up and then going down with barrels across the screen that are moving at different time, and you got to sync it just right. So you time the shoot and the air time to get into barrels. Some of them are like spinning. But yeah, the barrels aspect was huge in Barrel Cannon Canyon. And
Yeah, that was a big theme, I think. That was a big gameplay element that would show itself throughout the game. and that level really presented it in a big way. I like how some of them you control when you shoot out of the barrel, and some of them have the explosion mark on them, and you know that when you go into that one, it's going to shoot you immediately. So I don't know
Yeah,
if
it
in
almost gave it like that zany aesthetic that, zooming around as Sonic, like going
hmm
through loops. And but as far as the music, there's one track that I have saved in my audio to this day, and I use it from time to time to do some meditation.
oh
Uh,
yeah, I know
Choral
the one.
Capers, bro.
Yo, the music in those underwater levels is ridiculously good.
It's like it could be a cure to many an ailment. The music itself.
Yeah, so if we want to, we talked about the graphics, and we'll talk about the graphics more and more as different examples come up. But we could do the same with the music. So this game, to me, really started doing something different with music for video games that I just felt like it was something that wasn't seen before. We had some good music in Mario. We had some maybe better music, in my opinion, for like Zelda Link to the Past. But you get to Donkey Kong Country, and now we have like orchestrated tracks. We have synthesized instruments. We have a depth of sound. We have echoing. Right? Like there's so
Yeah,
much
it was
going
almost
on.
transcendent. Like you were reaching through. You were like enveloped in this like ethereal world, and it was in a jungle that's just so alien to most people to begin with graphics that we had never seen. This game sucked you in and just grabbed you by, every sense that it could.
Yeah, and so many different moods too. Like you talk about the underwater one being so like peaceful and tranquil. But even just that first level when you go in, it's got that sort of, I don't know, is it like a big band feel? It's got that so many instruments, like a multi-instrumental track with
Yeah.
drums and the horns, and then the sound design as well, right? Like not just the musical track, but at the same time, you have the
Awesome
different
sound
the
effects
sound
too.
effects from the enemies, from your
Yeah.
friends, from like Diddy bursting out of the like trying to get out of the barrel. Everything seemed to have like that echo to it,
Yeah,
right?
and that thump that you would get from time to time, like where, you would pound the ground and maybe a secret barrel or an item would like pop out of the ground. That thump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic sound effects.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, that, and even that first track with the drums and the horns and stuff, and then there would be like the xylophone hit in the background. Like it was very well orchestrated, and that happened throughout the game. And we'll mention more sound design as we go. One of the levels in the Conga jungle that was striking right off the bat to me was the second level. I didn't write down any of the first world level names, but I think it might have been called Ropey Rampage. It was I think it was the second level, but it's a lightning storm, and
Oh yeah.
and you're going through, and it's like kind of a scary adventure at this point, right? You start out the game, it's all bright on the first level, and then you get to the second level, and already you're like, whoa. This is
Yeah.
this
This
is
is
going to
the
be a
jungle at
hard
night.
yeah, this is going to be a hard journey.
Yeah.
And it wasn't meant to be like obviously nowhere near a horror game, but as a kid you kind of get that sort of unsettled feeling in
Yeah.
that for that second level and some other levels later on even more so. But that really set the stage for saying we're going to give you a variety of moods throughout. And also like a variety of effects, because you had that lightning striking, it would flash the whole screen on on bright for a second and then go dark again, and that was cool.
Did we
And
get our first taste of the rain too in that level?
yeah, that had
Like
the rain.
passing showers? Yeah.
Had the rain, had the lightning, and that one actually introduced us to rope climbing and swinging, which is another big element of this game that's going to come throughout. So I think we hit a lot of the salient points that showed up in that first area. And then, of
Yeah.
course, we
You also
have...
have like the non-playable
Yep.
areas too, like the mixture. You got Cranky, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's
Which is
the
basically
OG
pointless.
Donkey Kong.
Right,
Yeah, he
yeah.
just hits you with that curmudgery, hitting you or swinging at you with his cane and insulting you like a grouchy old man would, just sitting in
Yeah,
his
he seemed
rocking
like
chair,
comic
right?
relief mostly.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
also he gave, what his point was, I think, was to give hints as to where you could find some of the secret areas. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He was helping you to get to that 101% eventually. And I'm not sure, I haven't tested this, but I think possibly if you like get the thing that he tells you about the first time and then go back to him, he might change what he's talking about and tell you about something new. I seem to remember that. I don't know if he would do that for like every single item in that 101%, but that was his point. Who else did we
Cranky's
have?
cabin. Got Candy. Candy was like
Right.
your save girl, right? You'd stop in and save throughout the game. I think she had like one location in each world.
Yeah. That seems sort of unnecessary to me. Do you think this was still because of the sort of prevailing sentiment in game design that you wanted to not have players beat the game in a rental? Because, like, why not just save all the
Possibly.
time?
Yeah, like that. All right, we're leaving. Turn off your console, and then you shut it off, and then you go back, and you get back home with your mom. From going out shopping or something, you turn your console back on or something. And you're like, oh, I never saved.
Yeah. Or you do the old leave it on, turn the TV off.
Get screamed at. Yeah. Get the super hot console because you were out for much longer than you ever expected to be out.
Mm-hmm.
Console's on fire.
Yeah, I wonder if there was some sort of hardware limitation or software limitation to not being able to save wherever you want. I don't think so. I think it was literally just to make it a little bit more difficult to make progress.
Yeah, probably. Oh, and then there was super cool like surfer bro Funky
Yes.
Kong, right?
So 90s.
I wish he was playable. Was he ever a playable character in any game that you can remember?
Not that I know of. It's possible, but I just don't remember any.
Yeah.
And his purpose was to fly you to different areas.
In his bodacious jumbo barrel.
Yeah. So I forget why that's necessary. Is it that you can't, once you're inside of a world, one of the smaller maps, you can't back out to the bigger map, to the world map?
I think that is, yeah, so you can
So he's the
backtrack
way.
or travel from world to world, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the point would be to go to the early levels to amass one-ups, to get more of those balloons and to, pick up free lives and stuff.
Oh,
in the
sure.
easier
Because it
levels.
definitely gets crazy as it goes on.
Or I guess to go exploring for secrets, right? Because secrets were
yeah.
big. That was an innovation, I think. We gave it a little bit of time, but I think that was a really, really big element of this game that deserves a little bit more attention. So the game had so many secrets, more than I had ever seen before in a video game, and they would manifest either in like not bombable, but like breakable walls that you could either hit with a barrel or hit with a TNT barrel or ram with your rhino buddy Ramby, or barrels that were like just off the screen. And this game contributed greatly to your buddy saying, "Oh no, jump in that hole. There's a secret there." Because
I remember
that.
Yeah.
That was a thing that kids would say to each other, and then you jump in the hole and you die, and you go ha 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 ha. But this game made that a real thing. We're like, oh wow, there was a barrel there, and I'm in a secret area now.
Yeah.
And the designers, the developers, had sort of a way about encouraging you to explore these off-screen areas, and sometimes they would do it with like a banana just at the edge of the screen. Like, should I just jump there? Are they trying to tell me something? And like 80% of the time they were trying to tell you, yeah, there's going to be a secret there. But sometimes you just kind of had to vibe it. Like, so many times playing this game, I would get the feeling like, you know what? There's something about that wall. I think I should go back a couple screens, grab a barrel, and come back here with it. And then, sure
Mm-hmm.
enough, that wall breaks open, and I have a little bonus area. So that was like a real draw of this game, going back and finding all those things. I love that so much. But anyway, so that was mainly the first level. We get to our first boss, right? The very
Naughty.
naughty rampage.
Now, was he like just a beaver?
He was a
He had a beaver
beaver,
tail.
yeah.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
beaver hopping around. Who
Yeah.
basically just does nothing. He hops back and forth, and you have to jump on his head 3 times. He goes a little bit faster each time.
Mm-hmm.
You beat him, but it was like a cool arena, and he was like this 3D sprite, looked really good for the time, and had the background with all the bananas and stuff. And you beat him, you get the giant banana with the Nintendo stamp on it, and you move on to the next world.
Oh, you touched on the rhinoceros Ramby.
Yeah,
Can we take a second to like let everybody know about all these other friends of ours that we get to explore with and do bonus levels with?
sure, yeah, because I don't think we see all of them in the first world, but we do see a few of them. So yeah, tell us about them.
So yeah, you got Ramby the rhinoceros.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Winky the frog, which has got, of course, mad leaps.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Espresso the ostrich.
With an X.
Uh,
Probably
and then,
the cause for so many people saying espresso incorrectly.
yeah, I was thinking about that. Squawks the parrot, who I think makes maybe 2 appearances.
Yeah, he was a little
A
different.
lot
than
more in the
other
latter
ones.
games. And then En Garde, my favorite, the swordfish.
Yes. So we saw Ramby and On Guard for sure in this first world. I don't know if we saw Espresso yet. Maybe we did. But Ramby was super cool because he was powerful, right? He could just mow down your enemies
Yeah, and then bust open those secret walls
and
for you.
bust open those walls. But he had very slippery feet. I realized
Yes.
this time around. I was like, man, I didn't remember this guy just not having traction, but he did not. Actually, all of the ones on ground don't. Well, no, Espresso has good traction.
He's got them sneakers, bro.
Yeah.
He's got like.
What does he do?
Jordans
What's
or
his claim to fame besides being fast?
Well, yeah, it's super fast, and you can jump, and then does he flap his wings to like stay up, or does he just
Yeah.
hover? I forget.
He does a little flap. It's
Okay.
kind of like a Mario upgrade, right? Where you have like the raccoon suit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then Winky, we get to. Well, we'll talk about Winky when we get to the next level where we find him. But On Guard was in that first water level, and he's your favorite. So why is that?
I'm a Cancer, bro. He's aquatic. He's blue, my favorite color. He's a swordfish. Swordfish are pretty righteously awesome, and they are delicious. It's probably one of my favorite cuts of fish.
That's so messed up. He's your buddy.
Yeah, well, you know.
So yeah, he was
he's
great, right? He was able to stab enemies while you're swimming. Press the button and he charges
into that
forward and
boot. Yeah.
stabs anyone in your way. And what made it even better is that he was a great upgrade in the greatest underwater levels ever in platformers. You know how underwater levels, you hated them always whenever they came up in any game? I don't know if it's just me, but I think it was everybody.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Country, I was playing through this time, and every time a water level came, I got excited. I was like, yes, I love these levels. Because they just
now
did
I
it
can
right.
move effortlessly.
They
Yeah, you
just did
flow.
it right, you know? Like, they didn't give you any stupid breath concerns. Basically,
I was going to say, apparently gorillas and chimps have amazingly long breaths. They are
Yeah.
great swimmers.
screw realism.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
they just gave us something that was good to play. They put a lot of obstacles under there but that's all that we had to contend with. And this is something I talked about with Anthony Labella in episode 3 when we were talking about Echo the Dolphin, and how like if the developers of that game would have focused either on like the puzzle of getting through the levels and managing your breath, or the obstacles of the levels without having to manage your air, it would have been a better game for it. And then I didn't use Donkey Kong Country as an example of a game that did it better, but coming to this and playing it, I saw like, oh, right, this is a game that has brilliant underwater levels for exactly the reasons that we were talking about, and the controls are great. There.
Oh, and gone are the timers, right? So we could casually go through nearly every level of this game at our own pace, which, you know, just brings back that point you made about, you know, being encouraged to explore, you know, and go back to check things out. So
yeah, not in a rush, even though the game sort of felt like it had a pace that you like. You felt good when you were like moving fast, but you could slow down,
sure.
which was great. All right, so speaking of moving fast through a level, I'm going to skip over 2-1 to just talk about 2-2. We can come back to 2-1 if we want to talk about it. Minecart Carnage. So this is our first minecart level, which was something that they had in the game a couple times. Yeah. And that was really cool as a kid. It was less cool when I visited it just now, recently. But it was still, you know, it was like, oh yeah, I remember this, and it made me feel good nostalgically. But as a kid, I remember it being like the coolest level ever. Do you remember that?
It was a nail biter. You
Yeah.
know, the timed jumps, you know, the obstacles that were kind of like thrown in toward the end, those I guess those abandoned fallen carts that were on the tracks. You had to time them like almost perfectly because your jump would just clear it. You know, too early you'd hit it, and then you'd have to pray that you had both Donkey and Diddy, you know, to get back in that cart. And I don't know if this was the level where we actually had the kamikaze croc carts, where they were like coming at you too, right?
Yeah, there was one, I think it was this at the end of the level where you're like on the final stretch, and then all of a sudden one more cart comes out. Oh,
yeah.
So annoying. I remember dying a lot on this as a kid.
It was around the time, like, my mother had such a love for all things Harrison Ford, especially Indiana Jones. So this brought me like right there to the Temple of Doom and that, you know, that epic minecart, you know, scene. So yeah, this was super cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah. This whole area, man, I want to talk about so many different levels. The one right before this was it was called Winky's Walkway. It was the first time we got Winky the Frog.
Yeah.
Who, his special ability was not only jumping high, but he could jump on bees that were impossible to kill any other way. Or could you throw barrels at them? Yeah, but you couldn't hurt them yourself.
With barrels. There were some bees that were just impervious to everything.
Yeah, except Winky.
So
he was cool.
Ate those.
He was a little.
He should have eaten them.
He was a little hard to control. Like he had like. He was hard to be precise in his landings because his animation was always bouncing.
Yeah.
You know? But he definitely was able to jump super high and protect you from these bees. But in this level, this had some of those graphical effects that were like brand new. It was on scaffolding, and there were these lights dangling like in an interrogation room, swinging to side, and the lighting effect was going with it. And it also had this sort of like pan flute or like Native American flute music in the background, and it just was so atmospheric. Man, I love that.
Yeah, I think the music in the game is just next level.
You remember Stop and Go Station?
Oh, yeah, for sure. With those almost like zombie crocs, right?
Yeah, so this one's more of that horror, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. This one scared me a little bit when I was a kid.
And it had this new mechanic that we hadn't seen. You know, this game, really made a habit out of adding new gameplay conceits, like constantly. And this is one of
Mm-hmm.
them. You hit these barrels that say stop or go. Like it'll say go, and you jump into the barrel and it goes stop. And when it was saying go, these monsters, they're like made of stone and they have these red eyes and they're impervious to everything. And they
Rock crocs, yeah.
yeah, and they like sprint back
Glowing
and forth
red eyes.
so fast.
Yeah.
And they're like, and it's creepy because they're like stop motion animated, different from everything else. Most of this game is very fluid, but they had like this very staccato, almost like wind up toy look to them.
Uh-huh. Very creepy.
Yeah,
for a kid.
And it was pretty dark, and you had to like make it to the next barrel to stop them, or they were gonna get you.
That's right.
Super cool. What else? Any of the other ones in here really speak to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, you couple going back to, what was it, Stop and Go Station? Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Yeah. The, just the spans that you'd have to run too. So you jump over that barrel, you flip that switch to stop, and you gotta book it. You know, you gotta do some long leaps too, maybe jump a gap and hit a tire bounce, you know, and grab another one because it would like flash to go again. And you saw like that rock croc just like in his crouched, like, sleeping golem like position or whatever it was
So
before
scary.
he reactivated. Yeah, dude. For real. And it had like almost like a greenish filter over it too. So it was like a murky.
Yeah, the whole thing had a very like nauseous sort of looking filter over it.
Make you sick as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a temple themed level here too.
Millstone Mayhem, yeah.
Yep. So that was just more examples of changing the sort of background look and palette that we were playing with.
Yeah.
I think it had great music too.
Like Crusher, the big croc. He was like big and blue. He had like the tank top, almost looking like Rambo or Commando, coming out of like
you couldn't
80s.
hurt him.
Nope, he would just like flex it off and bounce you off. Would you be, I think you might have been able to roll through him as Donkey Kong. Am I wrong on that one?
Maybe that's right.
Yeah.
I know that.
Or maybe that was the big like the big belly crocs that wore the helmets.
Yeah, so they each had like different methods of killing them. I think Diddy couldn't jump on the fat ones, but could roll through them. Yeah. And then Diddy could do nothing to the muscle-bound guy, and Donkey could only roll through him, and then the different colored one, neither of them could do anything to without hitting them with a barrel.
Yep.
I'm not sure, but the game did a lot of that. They had these enemies that even with your very limited move set, with your limited verb set, you could only sort of get by some of them in different ways. Like, for example, the claptrap. It's like a little crocodile. He just looks like a crocodile, but he's walking along the ground and has a big mouth. And you're used to...
Like a land piranha.
Yeah, exactly. You're used to rolling over the enemies that are on the ground because the snakes were really easy to defeat by cartwheeling or rolling through.
Yeah.
But then you had this claptrap that you couldn't roll through because he had this big mouth and you had to try to jump on him precisely. And he was very small. He was very short.
Yeah.
So it made a new kind of challenge. And they did a really good job of introducing varying challenges in different ways throughout the game. You had some of the enemies that would like throw coconuts at you or launch barrels at you. All different things.
Mankeys. Yeah. Those orangutan looking dudes. What was the other thing? One nice aspect of the game too, which always felt cool, where you could flex in front of your friends especially, was where you've got like, a sequence of enemies, and you could like chain a roll that would take you like
Mm-hmm.
maybe a screen and a half in length, or maybe just time the jumps and bounce over, like, bounce on top of like 5 or 6 enemies' heads and just nail it. So yeah, there were a
Yeah,
couple of spots where that was cool. And that there was a way where you can actually like log roll on a barrel if you time the jump on a steel barrel right.
right.
It was like a super rare occurrence, but I remember doing that a few
Yeah, they
times.
had the steel kegs, and the best way was to throw it at a wall behind you and have it bounce off, and then you jump on it and catch it and ride it the rest of the way.
And just steamroll through.
Yeah. I like how the mechanics of the roll changed. Your like the physics of it changed when you hit an enemy, it would extend the roll. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were saying, you could roll like for a long time through a few screens. It was because
Yeah,
of that like little added nugget they put into the mechanics.
so genius.
Yeah, that helped, and that helped, like I said before, with the momentum of the level. You wanted to like rush through it. Really cool. So we finished the monkey mines, which is that world, by battling a vulture named Neki, who sticks his head out of the side of the screen and spits nuts at you. And you have to bounce on a tire and jump on his head a bunch of times.
Yeah. Most of the enemies, I think it was like four. I think it was four was the magic number
Oh,
where
was
you
it
get
4? It
them.
could have been 4, yeah.
Yeah.
3 is a Super Mario thing. What'd you think of Neki, the vulture?
Oh, he was lame, dude. And what was cool, like when you were getting when you were fighting the bosses and you finished them, like right in the center of the screen where the giant Nintendo banana would just drop. If it dropped on him, it was kind of like,
Yep.
adding insult to injury.
You always wanted to finish standing right next to where they had fallen so that banana would fall
Yeah.
on them. So we go to the next area, Vine Valley. And what was good here?
Well, I mean, a lot of the levels I jotted down. It was very reminiscent of Endor. Like I had such a
Oh.
Star Wars vibe, from just the speeders in Star Wars. Like when they're zipping through the woods that looked like it was cut right from there, and then Treetop Town. It looked like where they were partying with the Ewoks, at like the end of the
Mm-hmm.
trilogy there. So, yeah, it's very reminiscent of Star Wars in that respect.
Yeah, that treetop town with those all like basically sort of scaffolds attached to trees in like
Mm-hmm.
the mid sort of canopy. That was a really cool level. I like the way that looked too. And it had a really like jazzy sort of Marble Madness remix to it.
Mm. But one of the levels that really stuck out was Forest Frenzy. That's where you were like on the rope and it would like go through the level. I think it maybe would have been like 3 or 4 different segments of ropes that you would jump on, and then they would just travel the map, and you had to like, climb up and fast descend down the rope and like weave through bees and vultures and all the other stuff that was coming your way. I think there might have been rain too. So that was pretty cool. That was different from all the levels that had come before it.
Forest Frenzy with the vines.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Temple Tempest. This is why I kind of passed over the Millstone Mayhem, because Temple Tempest kind of came back to the temple level temple template. And this is the one where there were like the little beavers that were inside of the giant sort of millstone wheels that would chase you. And
Yeah.
like they would follow you and cross gaps that you had to jump over, and they would only get
Yep.
stuck if you like made it over a really tall element in the foreground of the level. That was crazy. That had a very like Indiana Jones feeling to it.
Boulder chase
Yeah,
aspect.
exactly.
Yeah. And that was a level where that rolling off the edge to do like that big jump to clear gaps came into play.
Mm-hmm.
Like that became like a staple of your movement.
Yeah, as we
especially
go
on that
on,
level.
we see more of those advanced moves start to be really beneficial. We see our orangutan friends in the treetops throwing barrels at us. in a
So
orangutan game.
nasty. No, so nastily though.
Their
Just their
face.
whole like, yeah, they're so like so crunk with it, like just winding up and like winging it at you, like sidearm, like
Yeah.
you should be swinging them orangutan arms at me, boy. Oh man, so much shade at those
We had another
Wankies,
water
dude.
level too. Man. So this is where I realized, like, I said to myself, I could play an entire game of this, of these water levels, and love it. So good. So what do we have next? Bumblebee Rumble.
Yeah, the barrels kept showing up, and we had to just hit him. And every time we hit him, he would like turn red, and he was
Yeah.
invulnerable.
Yeah,
And then he
he
would
goes
speed up
around.
and then do like this weird like wave pattern. You know, to figure out whether you were gonna, just time running underneath him. I guess for the most part.
This had a very Super Mario Brothers sort of vibe to it. It just goes around the edge
Yeah.
of the screen till it comes back, you hit him. Then he does something crazy. Then around the edge of the
Mhm.
screen. Not really the most inventive boss battles, to be honest. So we get past him. Now we're in Gorilla Glacier. Now
Yeah.
this was another graphical, just jaw-dropping area to me.
From the snow and the loss of traction, the music just continued to be awesome from the snow barrel blast. Now this is where you had like the barrels that were spinning, but now you had like super snowstorm, like
Mm-hmm.
near zero visibility.
So
You know.
tense.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I think were there a lot of bees in this one too, or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were bees in, and you had to do all this manipulation of not manipulation, but like timing with these barrels. And I love how like it starts out, there's no snow, then it starts to snow in the background. Then when you get to the really tough barrel part, it's snowing in the foreground too. Really cool.
Mm-hmm. Slip slide ride was the next one,
Oh yeah,
and this
with
one
our
had like
elevator
this.
ropes.
Yeah, blue up ropes, purple down ropes, and there was no climbing. That was it. They were on autopilot, so
Yeah,
it
that
was
was
all
an
timing them
interesting
jumps.
mechanism. I'm glad that was only in one level, to be honest. It was interesting. It was hard to navigate at some points because they would like put multiple up ropes in a row and you had to jump from one to the next, and they'd put a B at the top of each of them. I was like, okay, gotta be quick.
There was one section in that level where you had like an up rope, a down rope, an up rope, a down rope, an up rope, a down rope, and at the bottom there were like the bunches of bananas that would just like
Mm-hmm.
just rope you in,
Yeah, gotta
to
go
just
get it.
drop into your doom.
Or they would do like up, down, up, down, up, up.
Yeah.
God damn it. You tricked me.
Yeah, you
I mean, I
got
could
me.
see the color, but like you get in sort of a pattern.
Yep.
What else? Torchlight Trouble was cool. Here we meet Squawks with the flashlight. So Squawks is different. So every other of our animal buddies, you find them in a big crate with like a silhouette of them on it, and you hit the crate and they come out and you jump on their back. Squawks, he's still in the crate, but what does he do?
He just shadows you with a light. He's like he follows you, so
Yeah.
he just loosely trails behind you and he's there to just light your way, but he's only lighting where you're at and maybe, how many ever frames ahead of you,
Mm-hmm.
in the darkness. But he's your boy. He can't get hit, so he never takes a hit.
Right. Right. He's
But
more
yeah.
of like an environmental assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I like how I didn't notice that, or didn't remember this, but when you turn around, there's like one frame where the light shines directly at the screen, like at your face before
Yeah.
flipping over to the other side. And it's like if you're going back and forth a lot for any reason, like trying to avoid some sort of obstacle, you
You
just
get the
keep getting
punishment.
strobed in the face by Squawk's light. I was like, oh, my eyes, because I'm playing in the dark, and it gets just the whole screen is white. That was funny. A few more levels here, sort of retread a lot of the other stuff. but adds to it a lot more like platforming, bees bouncing on tires, things like that. And then we get our first boss that's repeated with really naughty Rampage.
Yeah. So what's the difference between like what makes him really? He's just faster, and he like pounces at you more.
He just becomes more ferocious each time you hit him, I think.
Angry
He
beaver.
instead of just bouncing toward you, he bounces high or fast.
He leaps higher. Maybe he'll do like a strong leap toward you. So you've got to
Hmm.
prep for the pattern. Yeah.
But
But I
pretty
mean,
much,
all in all, the bosses, the bosses aren't hard. The hard part is, getting through the levels that get you to the boss.
yeah. There's one
You
that I
know.
think is pretty hard. We'll talk about it in a
Mm.
little bit.
Yeah.
But now we're at Cremcrow Industries, I think it's called, Inc.
I think it's Kremkrock.
Cremcroc. Cremcroc. I
Yeah.
can't read my own handwriting. That's what it is. Cremcroc Industries. So this is what? This is like an industrial level.
Yeah. It like speaks to like the bane of the industrial,
Now
industry, I guess. Or,
yeah, so apparently this is what the Crocs are doing to the island. They're industrializing the sort of idyllic jungle and turning it into just like an oil refinery. Is that the story?
like Homo erectus versus the lizard people,
Man,
or the reptilians with their technology.
that
Is that what Rare's telling us right now?
watch out for the
Uh,
lizard people.
and it's the flavor is, yeah. We touched on that before. Like you get that vibe of Killer Instinct. And what's that dude's name? I know you know the dude with the glaive blades.
Fulgor, I think, is who you're thinking of.
Fulgor, that's the dude. Yeah, but we get like several different, dynamically different level switches.
Mm,
We get some cool stuff that like they saved like the best for. What is this? What world are we in, Eddie? By this point, is this world 5?
fifth main area, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got industry. We've got like these factories and warehouses, and we get steel. For the
Mm,
first time, a lot of metal. So totally different. You know, backdrop to what we're used to, but we still got the same arsenal of moves. We got oil drums and flaming barrels and tracks and carts and
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely a thematic shift from the jungle. It's like it seems very unwelcoming at this point, right? You've entered a new domain.
Mechanical-ish.
So like most of these levels have something of note. Um just quickly on the first one, Oil Drum Alley. This didn't have a whole lot going on, but I loved the way that they had signaling for the bonus levels, like with bananas in the gaps underneath an oil drum that's spitting fire,
Mm.
and then they give you a TNT barrel, and you're like, well, I'm gonna throw it at that oil drum, and then that blows up, and then you can jump down. Or
Mm.
like some of the platform timing with these oil barrels reminded me of Mega Man with those platforms that would phase in and out. In this case,
Mm-hmm.
you had these platforms that would spit fire and then go dormant for a little bit and then spit dormant, and you had to like time
Mm-hmm.
all your jumps. That was cool. Nothing like
Yeah.
super innovative, but different from before. More innovative. What about Trick Track Trek? What could you tell us about that?
That was the one where you're riding on the track, and you have like you're on this platform, almost like a crazy mouse coaster kind of vibe where it's not moving terribly fast, but you're just on this platform and you've got the enemies and
Mm-hmm.
the pickups around you going up, left, right, down.
Yeah,
Um,
you're kind of at the mercy of wherever this thing's taking you because it's the only solid ground. Well, not even solid, it's just a platform floating, but it's the only thing that you have because everywhere else around you is death, is falling to your doom.
yeah,
So that's cool.
and we haven't really had that since like the minecart levels,
Yeah.
where you're not really in control of your lateral movement,
Right.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah, but this was like just a little bit different in that you had your platform moving and you had to stay on it or at least near it so that you can get back to it. Whereas in the minecart, you were safely inside of it. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
cool little upgrade. Speaking of which, we had another minecart level, Minecart Madness, and they changed it
Mm.
up just a little bit. Whereas in the first one, you you would jump and the whole cart would jump with you somehow. But in this one, when you jump, the Kongs jump out of the cart and it keeps going on the track and they land back in it. So you have different sort of ways to interact with the level. So that was interesting, but I found this one much easier.
Yeah, there was another aquatic level, Poison
Mm-hmm.
Pond, which was like green. It was a
Yeah,
nice touch. Poison Pond.
green
Yeah.
water.
All that murky cloudiness.
Still pretty great as far as water levels go. Just a lot more obstacles, right?
Yeah, but the next one that really stood out, Blackout Basement.
This is a standout level.
Oh yeah, that brings you back to that feeling of dread. Not like, what was it? Stoplight. What
Stop
was
and
that
go
other level?
station.
Stop and Go Station. Yeah, this one was like 2 seconds of light and then 2 seconds of darkness. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
this
just
one was like less scary as far as like horror, but more of like, if I don't do this, I just am gonna lose.
I'm gonna
Because
fall.
the thing about this level is they didn't just turn the lights off. They blacked out everything on the screen except for the Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and Bananas. Like literally
Mm.
everything else was pitch black.
Yeah, was this a mid jump? Was this a big jump? Do I
Yeah.
have to roll jump?
It wasn't
Maybe I'll
super
just wait till the
hard,
lights go back on. Yeah, no.
but it was like it was an effect for sure. Like
Yeah,
it
for
had an
sure.
effect. And that was then we get to the boss. Dumb
Boss
drum.
Dumb Drum. You shake out different enemies at you, right? And then when
Pairs of enemies. It was like Noah's Ark in reverse. Killing all of the pairs of enemies instead of making them live.
Side note: the sound effect of the Kremlings getting jumped on is what my text messages are on my phone. So, yeah, I've got so many people be like, "What?
What is
Isn't
going
that Donkey
on?"
Kong?"
Yeah, so this boss was pretty, I don't know, fine. I guess it was pretty right in the middle of the road of how I would describe a boss.
Yeah,
Again, game not super. I'm not super about the bosses, but we get to Chimp Caverns, our final full area, and we have a lot. Oh, actually, here I wrote down one of my favorite levels, Tanked Up Trouble. Now this was sort of
yeah.
a repeat of Trick Track Trek with the platform, except you're riding on the platform and it has these 5 lights on it, and they'll gradually tick down because you're running out of fuel. And there are the
Yep.
fuel barrels throughout the level, and you have to jump off of your platform onto other dangling platforms or bounce on enemies or whatever to hit that fuel barrel that would then add the lights back to your platform that you're riding.
Yeah, and
And
some
it
of
was
those
really
tanks
cool.
would be like full gas or fuel, and some of them would just be. It would have like a little indication as to how much fuel would be going in.
Oh, was
And
there
were
an
a couple of
indicator?
spans.
I always felt
Yeah,
surprised. Maybe I didn't notice it because I would hit one and be like, "What? Only one light?"
Yeah, there was a span where like you have to hit like 3 or 4 barrels, and it's just like you're dangling between like that 2 and 1 fuel point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All kinds of really fast platforming in that level. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
What else did we?
What is it? Manic Mincers.
Yeah, another
That was
cave
another one with
level
Ramby. Mm-hmm.
with lots of spiky walls. I didn't find that too like stand out. This
No.
is where I finally realized how slippery-footed Rambi was, though. Loopy Lights was another one a little bit later. This was sort of like a combination of Stop and Go Station and Blackout Basement. This one didn't completely black out everything. This one just kind of dimmed the lights way down so you could kind of see the background light points and kind of figure out where to jump.
Yeah, but some of the enemies kind of blended in with that faded light aesthetic too. So sometimes the enemies would just like, they would catch you.
And they had these enemies for the first time, the jumping clap traps, where when you jumped, they would jump.
Oh yeah. Were they like purple?
Maybe they were a different color, but they were.
Yeah.
What was really notable about them was their behavior, and it made it like a little bit more tough to time getting past them, and also like to hit your light switches.
Mm.
Platform Perils was the last one here.
No, I don't. Yeah.
Do you remember this
was
one?
that one?
This one's with the platforms with arrows that were like going in all different directions. You would stand on
once
it.
you jump on the platform
Yeah.
and then it would move in that direction that the arrow was pointing.
This one was really cool.
Yeah.
I had a lot of trouble with the first half of this level. It was tough.
They were probably secret barrels that you got to by staying on certain platforms past where instinctively you would jump off to get on the next one.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I think even at the
Yeah.
very beginning of this level might have been, or at some point in this level, you're on a platform that's solid and you see a barrel underneath you, a bonus barrel, and you're like, well, how do I get to that? And there's a platform that goes to the right when you jump on it. And what I did was I was just like, I just jumped up, let the platform go away, and fell down. And just below the bottom of the screen was another one of those, and it went left, and it went back to that bonus barrel.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm sure there's so much I missed. I finished the game probably. Oh no, I wrote it down with 66%. So I missed a lot this time. But again, that just speaks to the replayability, because right here we're at the last level. We have one more boss and then the final boss. But to have gone through, I played through everything. I did it, I tried to find bonuses when I could, or when it seemed like there was a bonus, and I still finished with only 66%. So you could imagine the time that you could invest into this game. And it's all fun because just the act of playing this game is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But in any case, this final boss, this was the tough boss for me. It was boss Necky's Revenge. And he did the same thing. He would spit a nut at you, and you have to jump on his head. And then he would spit 2 nuts, and then 3 nuts, and then 4 nuts. And as you got later in this cycle, it became very difficult to avoid his nuts and then jump on his head because you couldn't jump on him until he had spit out every nut that he had to spit. This is a children's show. This is a family-friendly show, by the way.
Necky.
Yeah, this was tough. And then right after that, we go straight to Gangplank Galleon, which is just a boss fight.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun.
The fake credits, that got me.
Oh, right, the fake credits.
You're like, oh, final boss, he's got 3 forms, and then once you jump on his head the second time and he drops, screen kind of dims and you get these red credits. And then what does it say? There's like some tagline, "Is it over?" or something. And he kind of like does like a Hulk Hogan like rev, from his face. And then he jumps back up. And you gotta get him one more time.
That was good. So what does he do? He throws his crown at you and runs back and forth. And then when he comes back, is that when he does the cannonballs from the top of the screen?
Yep. Yeah, he'll throw his crown at you, and then he'll do like that super fast charge, like he's bounding from one end of the ring, the rest of the ring to the other. And then you get him, and then he drops cannonballs that have those little gaps or whatever, and passing over.
And then he goes back to throwing his crown, and then bounces back and forth. Yeah, he's a cool, varied boss. I liked him, and I love the credits. where you just see all the little sprites. They really wanted to show off the sprite work, I think, because they had all the characters of the game come walking across the screen, and it was all funny too.
Yeah.
Like they had them all interact with each other. I love that.
Yeah, the jellyfish chasing one of the chomps, the sharks.
Yeah.
Looking like those meeps from back in the day, the Muppets or Sesame Street. Just wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, I love. There's a real sense of humor about the game, like that pervades.
It's cheeky.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheeky monkeys.
So good. Yeah, and then you get that at the end. Cranky saying, "I would have beat it in an hour." Blah blah blah. Interesting lore tidbit. Cranky is supposed to be the original Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong in Donkey Kong Country is supposed to be his grandson. Donkey Kong Jr. was in Super Mario Kart and then never heard from again. After there was Donkey Kong Jr. the game, and then he showed up in Super Mario Kart, and then we just don't know where he went. All right, so Donkey Kong Country. After having your lifetime experience with Donkey Kong Country and your little revisit watching and our talk here, what are your takeaways?
Well, this is definitely one of the games that should be a part of any gamer of any age's library. I think that this is timeless, and having a 3.5-year-old daughter myself, who's one of her first onesies was Dad's, future gaming buddy. This is definitely a game that I'm gonna teach her how to play video games with. Yeah, this is just one of those fun games. It's not not violent. It's fun humor, and it's visually, sonically, it's a work of art, and I'll forever love this game.
Yeah, man. I'm totally on board. This has always been a standout in like the pantheon of historical sort of Hall of Fame games.
Yeah, one that like doesn't age.
Yeah, it still plays really well. I mean, it looks a little janky on a big LCD screen. I mean, I'm not gonna defend it to the end of the earth on that, but
Sure.
but still looks fine. It just kind of has a little bit more of a blurry look to it now than it used to. On those smaller CRT TVs, they were like, what, 480 resolution or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the older games would kind of benefit from moving to LCD because they were those really hard pixel graphics. This one is just one that like kind of, it was the best thing for the viewing options at the time by far.
Yeah.
And man, the sound, the visuals, the gameplay, like everything about this game was just on point for me. And they carried that through to the next two sequels, which after playing this one, I kind of just want to go through and play 2 and 3 just for fun.
Yeah, they are super fun. You get 2 swifter characters in the second game. You get Diddy Kong and his girlfriend.
Girl power.
Girl power for
Dixie.
sure. And she's got Dixie, and she's got like a helicopter hover move, which brings a whole new element into it. And then she takes the reins in the third game, and she has like, I guess it's her baby brother. So you get almost like a revisit of Donkey Kong, but
right, 'cause he's a big,
as like a baby. Big baby.
Big baby. Yeah, man. So, listeners, if you have not had enough Donkey Kong Country, just keep going. Play all of them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. That's Donkey Kong Country with a little sort of sneak peek into the future of the series. I loved it. You loved it. That's about as good as it gets, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So if you want anybody to check you out online or anything, remind us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, I'm Anthony Gnagnarelli Jr. You might know me as Asylum in Arkham, Batman aficionado, super fan. That's my handle on virtually everything. You might hear me doing some voiceover and audiobook work in the future. Freelance, but my main gig is real estate. So if you happen to be looking to do anything pertaining to real estate, buying, selling, investing, renting, maybe know somebody else, I've got access to properties all over the country. I am not a high pressure salesperson. What you hear is what you get. And yeah, anytime I can be of assistance, feel free to give me a shout.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
Eddie, thank you very much, my brother. It's always a pleasure doing these podcasts with you and taking a walk down memory lane and revisiting these classic games with you. I can't wait till the next one with you, buddy.
All right. I love to have you. Thanks for being here. And that's going to do it for episode 5 of Smashing Bricks, a retro gaming podcast. Thanks for coming along again and listening with us. And I hope you did get to play Donkey Kong Country, because as I said on the cast, it is really one of the greatest games of all time, I would say. It's up there. On the next episode of the show, Anthony will be returning, and we're going to jump over to the Genesis, like we were saying during this episode, and we're going to tackle X-Men and X-Men 2 Clone Wars for the SEGA Genesis. And we're going to talk about both of those games in one show. If you like, you can go ahead and play through those 2 games, or one or the other. They are strictly for the SEGA Genesis or Mega Drive. And if you have any thoughts on those or any previous games that we've played, you can send that in to us either via text on Instagram, where we're Smashing Bricks, or Twitter, where you'll get us at smashing_bricks, or go to our Anchor page at anchor.fm/smashingbricks and hit that voice message button and leave us a voice note, and we'll put your actual recording up on the next show. Thank you once again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed it. And as always, until next time, may the nostalgia be with you.